Yes, we want to welcome everyone that has joined this call. Thank you so much for joining. We are here for our entrepreneurship session of facilitation, and we shall be here up to around 6 p.m. So kindly keep on in case you have any questions. We shall use the chat to ask the questions, but also shall give you an opportunity to raise up your hand such that you can be able to ask those questions you want to ask. But in case of another thing, kindly keep in the chat, and then the facilitator will be able to respond to all your questions. Allow me now to welcome Teacher Richard to lead us through today's facilitation. Teacher Richard, you are most welcome. Teacher Richard, unmute. Teacher Richard, unmute.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Okay.
I want to take this opportunity to appreciate everyone who has joined us this evening for our entrepreneurship facilitation. This evening, particularly, we are going to have an interactive session, question and answer approach. We are ready this evening to give solutions to all your queries that you, dear students, might be having. But our center of focus is going to be on entrepreneurship paper 3, given the level at which we have noted over years that the way learners present their evidences, it is still a point of worry, and therefore we want to also give it focus this evening. However, we shall cut across. If you have a question in any other paper, please don't hesitate to do so. Then after, we shall share the questions for self-trial. And that's how our program is going to be this evening. Hope you are able to hear me.
Yes, we can. You are very clear.
Okay. Thank you very much over that. I want to take this opportunity to share the screen first and foremost. We see how my laptop here is having an issue. Let me use the phone. But briefly, as I do the sharing of the screen, this evening, as I've said, I'm going to start on paper 3, and we are going to exhaust all the hints in as far as making a good grade in paper 3 is concerned. I think it is now visible.
Yes, very visible.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, we are setting off right away. We go to section A. As we are all aware, this being that we are handling candidates now, being the second term, we all know that the entrepreneurship paper 3 is set with 3 sections, and that is section A, section B, and section C. Section A being a case study, it is always question 1, and it is a compulsory question where they bring a case study in the form of a passage, usually not exceeding a page, that you have to go through and see how you can answer the questions that then follow. And then section B, as well as you are aware, we know that it has is, which basically focus on school business project. The project you must have carried out in your school as part of the practical entrepreneurship that you are supposed to engage in. In short, the laboratory for entrepreneurship education, which we hope by now, whoever is online here must have carried on that project. And then section C, we equally has 2 questions. Of course, we also know that it has what we call field attachment and then field trip. Field attachment usually being question 4 and question 5, which is our last question being the field trip, where we demand that it becomes now hands-on. You go in a real practical business world outside the school environment. In a field trip, you visit an already existing business. In the field attachment, we require that you go and practice your entrepreneurship, your skills gained in classroom in a real business setting. My concern of choosing this paper perhaps today is to solve the issue of evidences, which seem to be a problem to majority of our learners when it comes to presenting evidences on points. This is one of, but then evidences sometimes let us down, given the fact that it's a paper that we keep marking out of a half, a full mark, and then every time you don't present your evidence, really, you see that it affects your grade, which is not proper. When you start off, I want to start off with case study. Whoever has a question, you'll raise it perhaps in the chat room. Also, at a opportune time, you will be allowed to carry up your hand, and we have an interactive session. We want to exploit everything and leave no stone untouched. We are going straight to case study questions. As I have said, that entrepreneurship has 3 sections, section A, section B, and section C. Section A is a compulsory part which holds question 1, which is a passage in this case that a learner is supposed to read, internalize, and then answer the questions that follow. But over time, you realize that some learners have failed really to pick up on the marks allocated to this section. Yet when you try to look through all the sections, this would really be the section where we expect every learner to get above the average. Why? It's a reason as to why we are going to look at that. Why do we think case study part particularly would be the best for a candidate to harvest the best marks when it comes to entrepreneurship? Paper 3. I'm starting right away. Generally, we all know that case studies come from any topic from advanced level entrepreneurship education, particularly the foundation of entrepreneurship being paper 1, because one content and put it in a real practical situation. And you realize most of our case studies come from the content, particularly the course outline of the topics in paper 1. And it is always important for you as a student to read and understand all the topics that you have in paper 1 and paper 2. Very important. Because if you really go with sketchy content in paper 1 and in paper 2, then things may not really move well in paper 3. So the basis for paper 3, the foundation, is always from paper 1 and paper 2. It is very, very important for you to master that content. And we say, particularly when it comes to this case study, the reason as to why I said it is the most passable section, especially this section A, is because we don't look at the issue of tenses so much. The tense, when it comes to section A, case study, when it comes to evidence, you realize that most of the parts within the question they don't really require the evidence, given the fact that the case study was brought by an examiner, and therefore you cannot control it, unlike school business club, where it is you, the learner, trying to narrate to us the kind of business you engaged in and all that. So there you have all the authority to give us all the necessary evidence. But when it comes to case study, it is you cannot control it. In short, everything is fixed, and therefore you realize most of the questions which come along with section A, case study, they don't really require evidence. Then these are just general hints when it comes to case study before we go through in its depth. We realize that as a learner, it is advisable that these case studies you read at least 2 times, 2-3 times. The first time you go through, the second time you must have read the questions first. First time, go through the passage, read the questions, go back. Now, as you relate the content to the question is being asked, it is also important that as you read, you are able to identify particularly which topics is this case study trying to address. Once you identify the different topics that the story could be on, then you'll be on track to excelling section A of Entrepreneurship, paper 3. We are also saying it is always also advisable to start with this paper 3, rather section A. Like I've said, section A is the most passable section. Candidates usually get this paper, rather this section, 20 marks out of 25, 21, 22. Why? Because there's no much evidence that is required when it comes to this. And we also realize that some candidates don't follow the order, which is not proper. You find the learner has given 1A, from 1A, jumps to 1C, then back at 1B, and then 1E, and lastly 1D. I want to really call on you to always follow the order, the parts given in the question. If it is part A, let it be part A, part B, part C. If you don't know what to write on part B, basically number 1B, and then leave a space and continue to other questions, rather than mixing up the arrangement of the different subsections of the question. And it's also good, an organized candidate. By the way, I also want to tell you this. An organized candidate gives the first impression, and you realize there is a way you influence the person marking you. There's always that love that comes with the person who is already organized in the work and in the way you present it. So it is good also to introduce the question before giving answers. You go through the question. For example, if part 1 was asking about the qualities or maybe of an entrepreneur, maybe you go and say the following are the qualities of, maybe depending on the name of the person that is in the case study, so that a person marking you is introduced to prior knowledge of what the content is all about on that particular question. And then that was a general briefing. I want to go straight away to the nature of case studies, case study questions that are usually set. And in part 1, I want to start with questions which involve direct responses. Questions that call for direct responses, or case studies in short, those stories or passages that are presented to you, but when within them, there are already answers that you have to just keep on reading and spotting them out. That's where we mean by direct responses. The question given, it's just a matter of reading through the passage, identify the answer, and write it as it is without necessarily changing the content within. So the question is involving direct responses. In a case study, we are saying expected answers are directly got from the case study and have no need for further explanation. However, you are allowed to adjust the answers presented in the case study to fit the nature of the questions, especially on tense. Now, dear candidates, This has been a common practice, especially in case studies where we have some questions that have direct answers from the passage. If you find that there's a question whose answers are already in the case study, in the passage, it is always advisable that you don't change any meaning at all. Present the content the way it has been presented in the case study. The only thing you can do, the only input you can bring in is maybe to adjust on the tense, depending on the question. But you have nothing much to do with the point, the core of the point presented. We have seen a tendency where you realize that the answers are already in the case study, but when someone is presenting them, is trying again to change the meaning of the answers which are already given in the case study. The moment you see any question whose answers are already in the case study, please present those answers the way they are. The much you can do to adjust, as I've said, just maybe change the tense to fit the question, But also, there is no big penalty when it comes to issue of tense in section A. No big penalty at all. So we realize that questions that involve direct responses mostly have words like measures, strategies, ways, controls, how. Whenever you find such questions of measures, of strategies, of ways, controls, such techniques, then just know that the answers might be in the case study already, and you'll just need to spot them out and bring them on board. And we realize that measures, strategies, ways, and controls, we apply the tense of present continuous tense. That is use of ing. So majority of your answers you present, they must be having an element of present continuous tense when it comes to this case. Then we also have questions that involve such phrases: mention, state, give, outline, what, identify. Just as brief as they are, they're very concise, very precise. These give them the way they are in the case study. Don't add anything like building a point. We are not in paper one that you are now building a point on a case study which you did not present. Remember, this case study was presented to you. You have no input in it. And therefore, whatever is given, take it as it is when it comes to the case study. So if they use mention, please mention. State, please state. Give a direct point the way they are, especially when it comes to direct responses whose answers are already in the case study as we had earlier pointed on. Also, we say how to identify direct responses in the case study. How do I identify that this is really a direct response in this particular case study? We are saying these in most cases tend to come or appear in one paragraph or different paragraphs and separated by commas. You realize you find a paragraph within a case study which is outlining maybe about I'm taking an example of qualities of maybe a particular entrepreneur in that particular case study. They are saying he was also hardworking, committed to his work, persistent, and a risk taker. You find such a statement. There is already hardworking, committed, risk taker, persistent. All have been fixed there within just one paragraph, but being separated with a comma. Already, they come down and then they ask you to give the entrepreneurial qualities of Richard. Then this means, I'm just taking an example, if Richard was the entrepreneur they are referring to in the case study. You realize here they paragraphed the work. They gave all the points perhaps in a single paragraph, separated with commas. Now, when they ask you to give those qualities, let's say, for examination purposes, it is advisable that you present each different response independently. So in this case, you will say hardworking, risk-taking, persistent, committed, but on a different on different line. Don't again put them in a singular sentence. Why? If you put all those points in one sentence, just as it is appearing in the case study, then you are basically going to earn 1 mark and you'd have really lost it all. So it's always good, first of all, look through that. Someone here is saying we share the paper. Okay. The paper we are going to share some questions, but for now we are looking at those errors that learners tend to commit. Let us maybe first handle that part. Questions you receive them. Questions are very many, but the issue has always been on the way we approach these sections, and we end up harvesting very low marks, really very low marks. This is a paper that every learner would get reasonable marks if we are to make the subject shine. Now, we have been saying for examination purpose, present each with a different each different response independently, meaning on a new line, don't again state in a singular paragraph. Then part A, of course, we were saying questions which were involving direct response. Direct response meaning already answers in the case study. Now part B, we are looking at questions involving indirect responses. And here we are saying they are subdivided into two. We have where evidence is provided in the case study. Words in the case where evidence is already provided in the case study, we are supposed to use words or phrases used include the methods, sources. If you find such words used, methods, sources, outline the methods, explain the sources, give the tools, list the principles like that, laws, elements, characteristics, factors that affect or determine or influence. In most cases, you realize that these principles, for example, these laws, these elements will not be in the case study, but they might have given an evidence already in the case study. Whenever we talk about questions involving indirect responses, it means in the case study this time round, there is only evidence, but there is no point. But under direct responses, a point is already there in the case study. Now, how do I identify the point rather than evidence? And it helps me to generate a point when it comes to questions with indirect responses. Sometimes we interact with the questions like, I'm taking still an example using Richard. You find somebody has given an example, a story about Richard, and then they say Richard would wake up at 6 a.m. and close maybe the shop at 10 p.m. And then you are coming down and you're asking me, explain the entrepreneurial qualities that Richard possesses. Already you have told me Richard works from 6 a.m. up to 10 p.m. So that is already evidence, but there is no point. So here I will know that this person is hardworking. I will say hardworking. Richard is hardworking, but just say hardworking. And then say, for example, he works from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So the point given, already evidence was in the case study. Then you can find a point. Richard is committed. He works from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. There is nothing that limits you from using the same evidence on more than one point, as long as it can be applicable. It has no problem. That's why you find one evidence can even apply to 3 points, but then this dates us back at paper 1. If you had not read and mastered paper 1, then it will be this evidence already given in the case study is going to be useless to you, just because you don't know which point applies to what. So all questions involving indirect responses, they give you a clue, an evidence in the passage, but then it is you to use your general knowledge from paper 1 and generate the point, then attach the evidence already given in the case study. Question is, for example, which ask for principles. You have nothing much to change on the principle. A principle remains a principle. If you ask me maybe the principles of taxation, then they just bring them the way they are in the paper 1. even you can use the same explanation of paper 1 and present them. When it comes to section A, it will have no problem. Even when you present in the tense of paper 1, when it comes to these principles, because nobody can taper with the principle, nobody can taper with the law. A law is a law, a principle is a principle. We can't change anything. We also say question is of characteristics, of course, like I've earlier said. They can give you an evidence, then yourself you identify the characteristic that best fits the evidence given in the case study. I want to make a reflection again. I said, in part A, question is which involve direct responses. For them, we find points or answers already in the case study. But question is involving indirect responses. They instead give us evidence in the case study, but there is no point. So your role is to use the general knowledge, the entrepreneurship content you got from paper 1 and paper 2, pick that particular point, attach there the evidence which is already given in the case study. Like I've said, if they say is he works from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Now they ask you for the qualities of such a person. I said you can now say is hardworking. And then you say, for example, works from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I've said there is nowhere where it stops a candidate to use more than one evidence to be used on more than one point. It is very, very okay, as long as that evidence is applicable where you are taking it. Then factors that affect, determine, influence. Now, when they ask you the factors that determine, influence, when it comes to paper 1, such question is we give a neutral point. Explain the entrepreneurial, economic, environment factors that affect maybe the entrepreneurial environment. Now, when I state my point, when I state a point, in this case, a neutral point, it means I will explain both sides, the favorable side and the unfavorable side. That is on the side of paper 1. But if you ask me in case studies, that especially paper 3, let's say, when they ask you that explain the economic environment factors that determined the entrepreneurial environment, in this case, we only go with the positive side when it comes to paper 3. Paper 3, we don't talk about both sides. Somebody can even say, you state a point, a neutral one. Then when it comes to explanation, you only give the side of the positive, strictly the positive side. Don't go into details of giving the negative side as well. It is really not necessary when it comes to this paper. Like if you have set the point, let's say level of infrastructure development. In paper 1, we would say good infrastructure development. Okay, good infrastructure encourages entrepreneurship because it is cheaper for entrepreneurs to access raw materials, while poorly developed infrastructure makes it expensive for entrepreneurs to access raw materials, which limit entrepreneurship. But when it comes to paper 3, we shall still state a neutral point, level of infrastructure development. Then we talk about the positive only. We say well-developed infrastructure encourages entrepreneurship because it is cheaper for entrepreneurs to access raw materials and markets. We stop there. So whenever you find a question, whether it is in section A, section B, section C, as long as it is in paper 3, and they're asking about factors that affect what the word, the concept there, of key qualifier, affect, determine, influence. In paper 1, you state a neutral point and talk about two sides, the negative and the positive side. But in paper 3, we state a neutral point and only talk about the positive side only, unless if side. But as long as they have used the word affect, determine, influence, then that's how we are supposed to do it. We also come to okay. is not included. Remember, we said question is involving direct responses, and we said they are subdivided into two. There is where evidence is already provided in the case study, and then we said in the Roman 2, there are those questions where evidence is not included in the case study, meaning a point is not there, even evidence is not there, but they are asking you to present the answers to that particular question. Now, question is where neither direct responses are provided nor evidence is provided in the case study. How do we handle them? Here we looked at the approach. We said both the expected answers and evidence must be got outside the case study, or from general knowledge of entrepreneurship, or from paper 1 and paper 2. You may find the answers are not in paper 1, they are not in paper 2, but it is just in the general knowledge of business, of entrepreneurship. But in most cases, case studies whose questions are not having direct responses from the case study, and as well there is no evidence, their answers mostly come from paper 1 and basically paper 2. So you have to be keen on that. You read the question, you read the case study, you really see there is no relationship. Completely, you can't see anything like evidence in the case study. You can't see anything like a point in the case study, but then the question is there. Just generate information from paper 1 content and present it when it comes to this.
Excuse me, teacher.
This is a which all of us, specifically when it comes to this section A, that we should harvest above 20 marks. If you want to get a good grade, section A is where you should start by getting this particular section. We continue. I had given here a sample case study to see whether this case study is a direct response case study or it is an indirect response case study. I always prefer an interactive session. If we have any learner there who can read for us this case study, please, you can call up the hand and mute yourself and you read for us.
Excuse me,
Any
teacher.
volunteer? Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you're talking about the questions that ask for like determine, influence, where in paper 1 you give a neutral point. You said in paper 3 you just give the positive part. We don't need to give a neutral point.
No, I said paper 3 you state a neutral point just as you state in paper 1, but when it comes to explanation, you give the positive side only.
You don't give the negatives.
No, you don't give the negative side.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
So you even read us this case study.
Okay, teacher. It says Richard and Mattia are special friends who decided to start Chap Chap restaurant in their home area. The two friends involve workers in decision making, ensure job security for all workers, provide fringe benefits, and offer on-job training. The two friends work daily from 6 a.m. to midnight, and they charge high prices for the services offered compared to other restaurants, despite the existence of many restaurants.
Okay. Question? Can you read for us that question? Part A.
How are the workers motivated in the business?
Thank you very much. How are the workers motivated in the business? Now, I want someone to tell me whether this case study is a direct response case study or it is an indirect response case study, if you have really got what I've been saying about. Anybody to tell us? By show of hand, you tell us whether it is a direct response case study or indirect response case study. Because our question is saying, how are workers motivated in the business? Yes?
So it's indirect.
It is indirect. Okay, good. Any other trial? If we have someone else there. Oh, Uganda Matters is saying it is a direct. Lubega Ahmad. Okay. Lubega, please unmute yourself. Okay. Lubega is not talking. So, Uganda Matters, when I check the chat room here, Uganda Matters says it is a direct. Act High School says it is a direct. Kinyara SCS Masindi says it is indirect. Rahim says indirect. And Uring Secondary School says it's a direct case study. Let us observe our question very well. They are saying, how are workers motivated in the business? But then when we drive back to our case study, okay, Lubega is saying it's a direct case study. Techno J5, can you unmute yourself? Techno?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, sir. The question is direct because we have answers with commas in the case study.
Sample me some of those. Sample me the answers if you are seeing them.
Workers in decision making, ensure job security for all workers, provide fringe benefits, and offer on-job training.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much. This is a direct case study. Why? It is having all our answers in paragraph 1. They are saying the two friends involve workers in decision making, ensure job security for all workers, provide fringe benefits, and offer on-job training, just as they are. It's a direct case study. Now, here they are saying, how are workers motivated in the business? Remember, if they bring the keywords here is the word how and the word motivated. Now, what tense do we usually use on questions which ask for how, measures, control, techniques? Who can tell us what did I say that the tense there is, especially on questions which have how, control, measures, techniques, strategies? Which tense do we use? By show of hand or Noel? Okay, Noel, unmute yourself and then. Okay, Uganda Matters, very good. It's present continuous tense. We use ing on questions of how. This means when you come back to our case study here, they say the two friends involve workers in decision making, ensure job security for workers, provide benefits. Meaning, here we are just going to state the way they are, but we paragraph them as points. Going to adjust by putting there the tense. So I'm not going to change any meaning in this case. For example, I'll start by involving workers in decision making because of the word ensuring job security for all workers. The way it is, I'm not changing any meaning. I'm only adjusting on the tense, just as I had earlier talked about it. Providing fringe benefits. And then lastly, offering on-job training. A direct case study. Every answer is there as they needed it. So that's how we keep identifying whether it was a direct case study or indirect. But this now applies to, there's a circumstance where you find that part A of the question has answers in the case study. Part B completely has no even a single evidence. There's no evidence. You have just to get the general knowledge. Then you find part C, part 1C, let's say, has evidence in the case study in one of the paragraphs, but there are no answers. Like here, they are saying the two friends work daily from 6 a.m. to midnight, and they charge high prices for the services offered compared to other restaurants. Now, if they would ask you on the topics that this particular subtopics that this case study was addressing, who can tell me some of the subtopics you have identified that this case study is looking at? By show of hand, you tell us the part of the topic you suspect that this case study is addressing, because it's not a single topic. Paragraph 1, I see a different topic. Paragraph 2, yes, St. Joseph's Hill. Yes, you unmute yourself.
Human resource.
Management, but particularly Lenovo has brought it. Thank you, all of you. It is a human resource. However, we are looking at the part of motivation. Yes, Mr. Kaziva.
I have a question. When we're giving the answers, for example, that part of how the workers are motivated, do you give a full sentence, or you can give by providing fringe benefits, offering job training, or you have to say the workers are motivated through providing fringe benefits, through providing job training?
Haven't the first part of your question I didn't hear very well. However, you are supposed to the way you are seeing the points there, like I've said in the question, that how are workers motivated in the business. Now, if we are saying how are workers motivated in the business, the key terms there was how and motivation. Now, the how was helping us to particularly generate the tense, and someone told us that that is the use of ing, present continuous tense, meaning come direct to the points the way they are in the case study. Don't change any meaning, just adjust on the tense by saying involve. Instead of involve, you say involving workers in decision making. Don't add anything. Provide.
That's not my question.
Okay.
My question is, they had asked how the workers motivated in the business. So, is it okay to answer by just saying by providing fringe benefits or offering job training, or you have to come and say the workers are motivated by providing fringe benefits, offering on jobs training? Yeah.
Okay, I get your point. Always go direct to the point when it comes to this. Go direct to the point.
Okay,
don't go in sentences of the workers are involved in decision making. Workers are provided with job security. Go direct to the point so that your worker can easily be seen, and then things go. I think Mr. Charles is on here. Yes, I have unmuted you. Charles, you unmute yourself. Okay, the hand was up. It's okay. Now we can proceed. But the person who has asked the last question, it's always good you be direct to the point.
Okay, teacher.
So that your worker can easily be seen and marked than hiding. Hiding the question may not be right. Someone saying, am I right to use by, through? No, don't go in for that. In fact, these points of by, through, they used to be applicable when it comes to characteristics, solution is what, but it's no longer. Use present continuous tense. Where you feel here I must use where you feel I must use by, I must use through, please apply present continuous tense. Don't say by, through. Don't. Let me see here. Some people have questions here. Okay. Okay, I asked a question that which topics are there in that case study. And somebody had said motivation. Yes, motivation, which is under personnel management of human resource. Good. Then when it comes to paragraph 2, we realize they say the two friends work daily from 6 a.m. to midnight. Meaning we are now looking at the entrepreneurial qualities there. And then they charge high prices for the services offered compared to other restaurants. Now, if they charge high prices compared to other restaurants, then it means we are on business ethics now. They are not being fair to their customers. So there are 3 issues that we were focusing on in this case. So we proceed. We are saying NB. There is no standard tense. I think that's what I started with. There is no standard tense for answering section A question is. Okay, someone is saying, how do we deal with questions that ask for advice? Now, all the questions that we do ask you for advice, in this case, you see, when you are advising someone, I don't expect you to give evidence on a question that you are really giving any advice. We have always seen in many circumstances, learner ask questions that involve advice, that suggest, that recommend. I am advising. Okay. Mr. Charles is on. Thank you. Mr. Charles, okay.
Yes.
You have the microphone.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Good
sir.
evening.
Yes, Mr. Charles, we are hearing. Yes.
Just man. I'm saying you said that you don't choose choose by or through, but the question is asking the ways.
Yes.
To me, I think that if they ask you for the ways, how workers are motivated, even if I start with by or through, but I end with ing. Am I correct? Or I start with ing only as the present continuous tense?
I think Thank you, sir. I think the biggest issue might not be in whether you started with it. The issue is where did you use it? But in the beginning, I said the issue of tenses when it comes to case study is not a big issue. So there's no penalty for someone saying by, through, whether it's present continuous, whether this one has said by, through, we shall all earn the mark. But then I was looking at an organized student, how an organized student should be. Otherwise, with this paper 3, especially case studies, issues of tense is not a big issue in a case study. Thank you, Mr. Charles, for that supplement.
Welcome, sir.
Someone also had here that which question requires the use of evidence. I've not understood very well what you are meaning in this case. What about question that ask for guidelines? Another one is also saying, why don't we use could, should, will, when answering questions in the case study? Now, when you use such of will, can, should, might, you will be being speculative. You will be speculative. Someone, Nathan is saying, okay. Do you first introduce the question or not? There is no need. I just say at the beginning that if you're a smart student, just a matter of briefly just saying the following are the qualities of this, just that opening statement as a guidance. But there is no penalty for you not putting. I'm only saying for an organized student, it's always good you do that. So never you be, in fact, in entrepreneurship, we don't define concepts. If they have asked you a question, please go direct to the point. Don't be there and start defining, start making conclusions. There you will be just really consuming your time. Be direct to the issue. Okay. Yes, Mr. Charles. Okay, has gone off. So here we are saying there is no standard tense for answering section A. I think that's what I'm coming on already. No standard tense for answering section A question is. Therefore, each question is answered basing on the tense involved in each particular question. Apply the tense depending on how the question is given. Initially, I also talked about reading the case study more than once. It is advisable to start with section A, of course. And also you present the subsections in their correct order. Someone is saying that present tense works in all questions. No, not at all. In fact, when you look at our NB here, I have said there is no standard tense for answering section A questions. Therefore, each question is answered basing on the tense involved in a particular question. Qualifier for question is of advice. Now, if they ask you to advise, in most cases, just state, let's say, the point, state the point and give evidence, full stop. Rather, give the explanation of content of paper one because you are advising. If they ask you questions of suggest, advise, recommend, it is from your general knowledge, perhaps from the paper one content, paper two, just state the point from the way it is in paper one and give the explanation the way it is in the paper one because you're just advising. By the way, questions of advice are also common when it comes to section C because we never find issues of advice in the question, rather in section B. Advice is always in section A and section C. Wherever you see those terms used, advise, suggest, just give the point, explain it using the content of paper one. Nobody will question you for evidence there. But I still insist and go back to case study and I tell you, there is no punishment for failing to use the correct tense in section A. No tense at all. You'll always be marked correct. But we're only preparing a smart student, well-organized one. Okay, someone also is asking about question is which ask for the guidelines. I think if we enter into guidelines, particularly you will be going into paper 2 work, not paper 3. There you would have gone in paper 2 work. But guidelines, I think in paper 1, it's what we call the strategies, ways, techniques, controls. They are the ones which become guidelines when it comes to paper 2. But what differentiates them is the tense now. Now we change the tense. Either we use shall or we apply present continuous tense. But we generate from strategies, ways, techniques from paper 1. So that's paper 2 content, not paper 3. Yes, Mr. Charles has also supplemented the same here. Exactly. Thank you. Let me see. I want to exhaust questions before we proceed. Someone also was saying, okay. What if the question is already have, will, should, could, can't? We borrow those words. The answer is no. So whether the question has said should, don't again go everywhere and also using should. And this one now applies to let me hint on paper 1 on that particular issue. What you find a question like, what should the government do to promote entrepreneurship in Uganda? What should the government do? Now you find learners said the government should. Those are speculative questions. Rather, the word used is a speculative one. Words like should, might, shall, could, would, those are speculative. Should never derail you. So the key word there, in fact, in this case, I will apply the present continuous tense. So don't apply speculative words as a form of a qualifier or a tense that you are really applying. Who is this one? Okay, someone is saying, How do we handle lessons? Okay, so let me start with our lady of Fatima is saying, do we also use qualifiers in paper 3? Yeah, maybe you have just joined, but if you were there right from the beginning, I said it's for a smart student. However, I still say there is no candidate who can be crossed just because has used the wrong tense somewhere. It is really rare when it comes to this paper 3. However, it is good. There are those questions which you really see that the tense is clear and you should apply what is applicable. If you go outside that, then you will be really crossed. So nobody should mislead you that paper 3 is completely an open paper and therefore you can use any tense of your choice. Though I've said in case studies, sincerely, there is no big deal when it comes to tenses. But if you over deviate and you use your own tense, which is beyond, that changes the meaning of the words you are presenting, then there it will not make real sense. Someone is saying, how do we handle lessons learned from the case study? Now, if they ask you for lessons learned from the case study, of course, these are now inspiring statements. What have you learned in the case study? If they ask you such a question, it means these are basically the lessons that you have derived from the case study specifically. So I don't expect any standard tense. There's no tense, in fact, just drive according to you. What have you learned from the case study? Maybe one thing I can comment on that is we don't learn bad things. Therefore, you try to eliminate the negative and only pull out those lessons that are positive. So even when, for example, in our case study, we saw that he was charging high prices to the customers. Now, don't say that it is important to charge high prices to the customers, and you tell me that that is a lesson learned. Really, we don't learn negatives. We only pull out what is positive and leave out what is negative. Someone is also saying, if there are only 3 answers in the case study and the question requires for like 5 answers, can I add the other answers using the knowledge of paper 1? Exactly. That is good Samaritan SS. Exactly. Question is asking for advice. What qualifier can we use, please? Like still I said, we don't need any big qualifier in this case, but basically use the present continuous tense. That's the common tense that we can keep on applying. Use present continuous tense. But I still insist that nobody should ever be crossed just because you have used a deviating tense, unless if your tense is changing the meaning. That issue of tense, I always say, some of you are tying yourself to was, the business was. Yes, that is for an organized learner. But then you'll find a learner in section B who has said the business is, and it could be right, because not all businesses close prior to examination. There are businesses, even if it is a school business club, it is passed on to another class and the business is still existing. So much as for you closed and continued with your examination preparation, but the business is still there. That's why the issue of was, the issue of whether you should use was or is in section B, yes, the most recommended is was. But even when somebody has said is, as long as the point is there, really you have to earn your mark. Oh, someone is saying I've muted myself. How? St. Joseph's Hill. Do you have something to say? Okay, unmute yourself, St. Joseph's.
The difference between open-ended and closed-ended questions.
The difference between open-ended and then closed-ended questions. Now, if I can bring it in this perspective of paper 3, I would perhaps say the closed-ended questions are now questions which already have direct response in the case study already, if I'm relating it in this case to paper 3. But if we generate another meaning, it may not necessarily be that. But in this case, those closed-ended questions are those questions are rather questions that are demanding answers which are already talked about in the case study. Yet open-ended, you realize that you get from anywhere, from general knowledge, from paper 1, and all that. Then still in paper 3, it's advisable to use present tense in the section B, school business club. It is the best way to present section B, if you are an organized student, is to use past tense, not present continuous, is to use past tense. But I was just giving you a hint that there is no penalty for a learner who might have not used the was and went everywhere using present simple tense. For example, use of is, are. It's okay. However, I'm now organizing it to be a best candidate. Try to use past tense in section B. However, present continuous tense can also apply on some questions in section B. So don't cram the tense, but read and understand, internalize what the question says before you approach it. That's the most important. Don't cram the tense, but understand the nature of the question before you do the presentation of your answers. Then in field trip, what do you do when you are asked to describe the layout of the business visited? Okay, that one I'm going to show you. It is already in the presentation here. How best can we present questions of goals and objectives in paper 2? Goals and objectives in paper 2. Okay, I think now you're asking if they say, for example, you are dealing, let's say you are dealing in a carpentry workshop, and then maybe they say in your home area, and they say state the goals of your business. Now, if you ask me to state the goals, remember the difference between goals and objectives is that goals are merely medium or long term, and the objectives are short term. The points remain the same, but you must be smart. When I say smart, I mean you must be specific, you must be measurable, realistic, time bound, and all that, and achievable. Now, for example, I can say to increase sales by, because I must show the percentage, the increment, and then I must also show the period. I'm going to take an example of a percentage. To increase sales by 2% or by 10% in 1 year. That one becomes a goal. But I can use the same point to generate objective, to increase sales by 5% in 2 months. All objectives are below 1 year in terms of a period. And you must be realistic, like we have said, you must be smart. Never you say that I increase sales by 200% in 6 months. You are not realistic. You cannot double the sales that you have been making in a period of only 6 months. Which magic are you going to use? So that's how we do present the objectives and goals in paper 2. You must be smart. That's what is important. Be specific. Your goal objective should be measurable. It should be realistic. It should be achievable. Don't set a goal that you cannot never achieve. Someone is also saying, okay, I have muted myself. Let me see. No. I think I'm on. And the question needs evidence. How can we defend the answer? You would have specified the section so that I know very well. Because when it comes to section B, yes, we borrow points from paper 1 and 2, but we must give evidence. There's nothing you are going to do or write in section B without evidence. Really, there must be evidence. And even when they ask you, let's say the monitoring tools, let's say, explain the monitoring tools you used in your business. Now, if it was section C and they ask for monitoring tools, I can even state them and define, just as they are defined, or I give their users depending. Because when they ask you things like books of accounts, what books of accounts were used on a business or are used in the business? Because if it is section C, they will always use the terms present simple tense are or is, because we presume that the business are still such businesses are still existing. So I don't expect you to go and use a past tense in section C. Because if you visited in Turkey, Turkey is still there today and perhaps tomorrow. And therefore, we don't expect you to use the business was. No, the business is. Even when they have asked you for general description in section C on the business you attached to or the business you visited, the only item that can have a past tense is date of establishment when it comes to section C. But there we use present simple tense, and that is or are. Why? The businesses are still existing. For you just visited them, you just attached yourself there, but they are still ongoing. But the reason for using was in section B, or that past tense, or where, is because we assume by the time of setting national exams, such businesses have closed up. However, I said there is no punishment for you saying the business is or are, whatever the case, in section B. Why? It could be still existing. For example, there are schools which do canteens, and this group hands over to another school and the process becomes continuous. How is mission related to vision, and what distinguishes them? This is Nyavitete SS in Rukongeri. Okay, what differentiates a mission from a vision? I think now this goes back to internalizing paper 1 to know what a mission is all about. Under social entrepreneurship, we go in depth to know what a vision means, and we go still in depth to know what a mission is all about. But a vision, I think a vision is basically the mental picture of where you want to be. In short, where do you want to be in the future? That's a vision. That's why when you find most of the vision is, you'll find somebody, let's say if it is a bakery, somebody is saying to be the leading producers of quality bread in the whole of East and Central Africa. That is a vision of someone. A vision should be smart also. Don't set a vision which cannot be achieved. And also don't set a vision which is very easy for you to achieve. So a vision is just a mental picture of what you want to be in the future or where you are trying to head. And all our goals assist us to achieve a vision. And then when it comes to someone was also asking the difference between a vision and then when it comes to a mission. Now, a mission is simply looks at that what makes you unique. Mission, what makes you unique? Because you may come in an industry where all other businesses have been there, but why do you think for you are going to survive and others will not? Or why do you think you are going to do better in an industry where you already found other players there? That's why most missions have answers like, most businesses have missions like to be the leading producer of quality, let's say quality bread at affordable price. Are you seeing the word at affordable price? Meaning, I have come in an industry where bread companies are already there, but what is going to make me unique is offering the bread at a cheaper price. So a mission is simply a reason for your existence. Yet a vision is where you want to be, a mental picture of where you want to be as a business. I hope I have handled you. Then Someone is asking about the screen. I am first of all looking at the chat room before I share the screen here. Can you use the same business for the field trip and field attachment? Ideally, no. No. You can't tell me that the business where you attached yourself is the very business where you went for a field trip. Can you visit your own home? Basically, no. You can't go to your own home. However, I would also say there wouldn't be a big punishment whether I attached myself there, because the people who mark those questions are different and they mark individual questions. So a learner may present it as an attachment, comes to another question and presents it as a field trip. You will still earn your marks. But now we are looking at a student who is organized. However, there is no punishment for that because the markers are different. Okay, Mr. Mujung is saying books of accounts, you show what they do as evidence. Thank you. Thank you very much on that issue. Act High School, do we give evidence on the taxes used by the business? Yes, we do give evidence. Because if, for example, you visited the bakery and they tell you that, let's say they pay which type of tax? Corporation tax, let's say. Corporation tax. Then you'll explain and say, this tax is usually charged on the profits made by the company. As simple as that. You'd have given evidence in this case. So there's nothing in paper 3, especially section B and section C, that you'll tell me it has no evidence. It's very rare, except these questions of advise in section C. Advise, suggest. Those ones may not necessarily have evidence, but all these others, they have. Even when you think there's no evidence, evidence does exist. Is it a must for us to write the general description in order when asked for in section B and section C? Now, I also want to go deeper and also comment. Thank you for bringing on board this issue also, because there are circumstances. Okay, before I answer that, let me see here. Luanga Ronald, kindly enlighten. See, rather than just looking for marks, let's make them practical. Go for the field attachment, go for a field trip, so that you don't look like an unprepared learner, as a person who's just forging out points. However, for exceptional cases where you find the learner, the business he visited is the very business he was attached to, I've said there's nothing that will stop that person from being marked, because the people who are marking those questions are completely different and they are not there to link and see whether you have used the same business name or not. And then, but I advise you to at least do it practically by attaching yourself and then going for a field trip, change the environment and learn different skills. And then someone, okay, before I go, how do they answer questions of how did you dispose of assets or other wastes? Let me first answer this one of general description. I had read it before. Do we give description in section C even if you're not asked for? No. That is form 6. No. Don't give description if they have not asked for it. Don't cram that description should always be there. However, when you are critical and you have observed the setting style these days, you realize general description is now almost even in section A. You find it in section A, you find it in section B, you find it in section C. The trend, you realize that. But then, students, that entrepreneurship is the only subject, you go to the paper when you are sure that at least the minimum I have is 8 marks, because you will go rest assured that there must be something related to general description in section B. There must be something related to general description in section C. At least you are sure of your 8 marks or 12 marks with you. And then you launch on those 12 marks and see of how you can gap it up. In fact, if you get this one, I should also say it. If you get entrepreneurship, an O, literally, if you, for example, last year, let me take an example of last year where you almost credit 6 was almost given at. I'm not saying, okay, I will not mention the mark, but then whoever got an O really got far below the average, got a very poor mark, must have gotten below 40. Must have gotten below 40. So we see that somewhat of general description here. I want also to complete general description before I go to another item. Is it a must to for us to write the general description in order, or when asked for in section B and section C? That is our lady of Fatima. No. By the way, I also want to talk about the issue of general description in depth. We realize that in most cases, a learner is asked for general description, and it takes a lot of time wasting on SWOT analysis, purpose of the business. Remember, when you go in for SWOT analysis, some of you now go and start writing about strength, weaknesses, threats, and what else? And opportunities. Why write all that? You find the learner has spent 2 pages just writing about general description. Please don't waste a lot of time. If I can relate and ask you, if somebody comes to you and says, can you introduce yourself? Talk about yourself. I think the first thing you do is to tell me your name. Meaning, in all the general descriptions you make, business name and address is very, very important. Business, okay, Bishop College is asking about plant layout. I'm going to handle that also. It is very, very important when they ask you for general description to indicate the business name and address. That's the only item I can say it should be there. Then these others, you are at liberty to state any. But perhaps an organized student, I expect you to give me business name and address first, and then you give me the location of your business location. Then from there, you can state anything you so wish. So I've always told the candidates that general description is not hard as the way people like exaggerating and wasting a lot of time on it. When it comes to business name and address, just give us the name of the business particularly and its address. I also want to really make a hint on the way we state business names. Take an example. You find someone saying, let me use the names that I'm familiar to or around me. Somebody says, Wanyange Chapati business. Wanyange Chapati business. That's wrong. In general sense, have you ever moved anywhere and you find a business which calls itself a business? No. Even if it is a hardware, there's nothing like that hardware, Wanyange hardware business. No. The words they can use project. I don't expect you to say Wanyange hardware project, Wanyange cassava project. It's a lie. That's a wrong business name. So even the way we state our business names matters. I expect you to say, for example, Wanyange Chapati makers, Wanyange Chapati producers, Wanyange Chapati enterprise. If you so wish, it could be an enterprise, whatever the case. Those are some of the things you should use when it comes to stating a business name. So if you have been there and you state your business name with the word business, then it's a wrong one. That's what I can inform you on. And then when it comes to business location, whenever you're writing about business location, we look at three key terms. And the very important term is the issue of district. I expect you to give me at least a district and any other two features. A district and any other two features, meaning a district is compulsory. Some people can use village and sub-count and then district. It's okay. Some people can say, for example, I'm taking an example of this, that I am in the business is located in Jinja district, maybe Bugembe Trading Center, opposite Shell petrol station. It's okay. You would have given me three items. The district is there, the center is Bugembe, and the nearby feature is a petrol station. It is also okay. But what is important in location, make sure that the district is there. Some people have said, what if when I come from a city? Which city? Issues, even when you come from Kampala city, use Kampala district. Whether you're from Gulu city, they apply Gulu district, even when you are in the city. That's what I advise you to do. Okay. Can we, teacher, can we please what? Resume to the questions we had planned to do? Okay. I think it's interactive. Let me handle Noel. First, Noel, please.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
My question was all about how to dispose of the wastes and about rental taxes in paper 2. Kindly tell us.
What's the issue? What's the issue with the rental taxes? First, be clear on that particular point.
Yeah, about the rental tax, we were using the 20% for the we first subtract 20%, and then we use 18%, and then for rental tax we use 20% of that money we have got from the chargeable income.
Yes, I get your point. Then what's now the issue?
Are we still using such? Because we are told that we are now supposed to use 75%.
No. When it comes to the issue of rental tax in paper 2, you see, issues of taxes are issues of law, and it is not something that you cram. We don't cram laws instead, but we understand laws if we interpret them well, if I can say. So it wouldn't be proper for you to say that let me cram 75%, let me cram 20%. One thing I can advise you is just understand the approach. Understand what, let's say, rental income means, gross rental income means. Understand what chargeable income means, and understand what the tax rate means. Whatever rate they bring for you, whether they bring the one of 20%, whether they bring 12%, because usually rent, for example, for residents, we realize there is 12% as well. Then there is a tax rate of 30%. The 75, we are talking of 75%, that one is applied as expenses. And then 30% becomes our tax rate. Then there is this one of 12%. And then there is an old one, 20%, because these are laws enacted by Parliament and they keep changing. So I would advise that you don't cram issues of rental tax. Go and be flexible. Just understand the approach. Whatever tax rate given to you, apply it as it is supposed to be. That's the only way you can pass those issues relating to rental tax. But don't be there and say, you find a question talking about 12% and you think they have made an error. No, that's not how it is. So always ready to understand and be ready for anything. As long as you understand what chargeable, rental chargeable, gross income, what gross income is, what chargeable income is, then you'll not be able to miss out on a point. Okay. Somebody saying major points for the general description of the business since less marks are allocated. Okay, I was completing on the issue of general description. I wanted to show you because some of you waste a lot of time. By the way, general description in most cases does not exceed 4 marks. That's what you have to know. It's a rare circumstance to find a general description with 5 marks. It's a very, very rare circumstance. It is always 4 marks. Sometimes even they put 3, but mostly it is 4 marks. So the key thing there, once I state my business name and address, location, I have told you, always a district is a must. Whether you come from the city, use the district. And then we put there any other 2 features. Could be sub-county, village, could be anything. But this means of saying the business, for example, somebody tells you that the business is located in Yumbe district, 4 kilometers away from Yumbe Guru Highway. Now, do we have a tape measure that we shall go around measuring your distance of 4 kilometers away? That's not a good location, really. It's not a good location when you are directing someone. So what is the 4 kilometers of Kampala Yumbe Highway? Because Yumbe Highway could be 100 kilometers. So where exactly am I going to branch off and measure the 4 kilometers? That's not the right location, and you should really adjust on that. And then you can now write on simple things like products offered. Don't even waste time saying the products offered. Somebody says products offered, puts, let's say, semicolons, and then full stop, and then says the products offered were chapatis, cassava. Now, don't waste time on restating the point again. Just say products offered, put semicolon, put there cassava, chapati. Continue. Description of fixed assets. Just put your columns and then state them. Maybe you had a table, charcoal stove, bucket, like that. Direct to the point. SWOT analysis. If you want to write about SWOT, then there's no need of you writing the entire SWOT. Write about strength, weakness, opportunities, threats. There's no need for that. Just pick out one. So those who want to pick on SWOT, just say SWOT analysis. Then put your columns and then you write about this. Any of that, you can write about the strength. You say the strength and then you give the strength. If you have said to write about the weakness, you write about only weakness. Because once you write about all of them, you'll still get 1 mark. So you have made a repetition, still you'll get 1 mark on SWOT. Nobody will give you more than 1 mark. And remember, on a general description, there is no half a mark. You either get a full mark or you fail. There's nothing like you say the products offered and then you failed, therefore let us mark product offered. No. General description does not carry half a mark. So always look out for those simple date of establishment. Even when you don't say that the date of establishment was, why do you repeat again? Just say date of establishment. Put full colons there and then say maybe 3rd of May 2023. Like that, straight to the point. That's how we summarize general description. It is one of those things you can write in less than even 3 minutes when you are done without going deep into all that. The same applies to purpose of the business. If you want to write about purpose of the business, then don't go into vision, mission, goals, and objectives. No, just pick out one. You say purpose of the business, and then say, put the columns and say vision. Then you say to be the leading producers of whatever the case. You give us only a vision, or you only give us a mission. But you go write a mission, write goals, write objectives, still you are going to get 1 mark, and yet you have wasted a lot of time. So hope the issue of general description, we have now sorted it out. So somebody was saying the major points for the general description. I have now answered you at Aremwa Peterson. The main point there on the general description is once you have business name and address. To be a good student, you can also give us location. Then the rest, give anything you prefer. And it's good to write in excess. Give something like 6. If they have put 4 marks, give something like 6. You never know. You never know. Like you may leave the paper saying that my location was very okay, but you didn't put the district. Therefore, you have lost the marker there. So it is good always when you write those excesses, they can earn you a mark and replace where you particularly might be made an error. What if your HD Media Center is saying, what if you asked SWOT analysis as a question? Can I do the same? What if you are asked SWOT analysis as a question? Can I do the same from Koja SS Mukono? Now, this is the very issue I've been talking about. You come to the general description, you have given all the entire SWOT analysis, you have exhausted it. Here comes part B. The question is asking, give the SWOT analysis of your business. Now, do you see how you have now really, you have wasted time up there, yet the real thing is down here. So up there on the general description, you can only pick out one item. Is it strength or weakness or what? Then when they ask for SWOT analysis, now there you exhaust. You write on strength, you write on weakness, you write on opportunities and threats. Maybe what I also have to comment about SWOT is that some of you are good at giving a point as a strength, and then at the same point, you come down there and use it as an opportunity. It's not always good on the same question. Somebody says, for example, they have asked you the SWOT of, and to give the SWOT analysis of your project you carried out. You say ready market on strength, and then you say this was provided by the club members and students. Then opportunities, you come down and say ready market still. This was provided by students and teachers and parents. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's recommended that you don't conflict yourself in the way you state your points. Somebody tells you in a strength that cooperation among club members comes in weaknesses. Again, it says that uncooperative members. On the same question, yes, it is applicable because we have seen in circumstances where advantages you give, it provides unemployment, and you come in disadvantages, you say, it leads to unemployment. That's paper 1. But I'm now looking at a circumstance of SWOT. If you are really designing a SWOT and then you are conflicting yourself, it may not really look proper. Make sure that you separate them. And then, okay, someone is asking that we handle the case study. See, I wanted it to be an interactive session where we give chance to all people who have their questions so that we can try to exhaust them when it comes to this paper 3. We want to see all of us get good marks in paper 3 because it's one of the simplest papers that we can really all excel. General description. Yes, Mr. Mujung is saying general description can be called background of the business, characteristics of the business, describe the business, profile of the business. Thank you very much. Hope you have seen. It can be general description, it can be background, it can be characteristics, it can be, they can tell you to describe, give the profile. They will all really mean the same. Somebody is talking of sharing the screen. The screen is already here. And okay, Kere High School. Yes, unmute yourself. Secondary school. Is it Kere? Unmute yourself. I see your hand up. Kere SS, you can talk. Okay. Okay, someone saying, can you include? I think Cheres, yes, you have failed to talk. Let us just unmute yourself and then we. Okay. Can you include answers which aren't in the passage? Can you include in answers which aren't in the passage? Yes, that's where we started from. Depending on the nature of the case study. Is it a direct response case study, or it is you see, most case studies are a mixture of both direct response and indirect response. Now, if a question is on indirect response, meaning either in the case study they have only given evidence and there is no point, or completely there is no evidence and there is no point, then automatically the content is going to be generated from outside the case study, and that is paper 1 and paper 2. In fact, most of the content when it comes to such section A, case study, it's a rare circumstance to find that questions are dominating with direct responses in the case study. Very rare. You can find only one question that has answers in the case study, but the rest, either they have evidence in the case study and they use the knowledge of paper 1 and paper 2 to give the points, or completely there is no evidence and equally there is no point, and therefore you have to use the complete knowledge of paper 1 to attempt the question. Then when are we having NT paper 1 specifically, Beneza High, in the next session? Next session, you see entrepreneurship timetable, we shall handle paper 1. So be on board. But as we handle paper 1, we shall not stop those who have other questions in other papers also to raise. It will also be okay. Like today, our focus was in paper 3, but we are also answering questions in paper 1 and 2. Can I write the address without a box number? Now, it will also loses meaning, because if you give me your address, however, somebody can give me the address through a contact. Somebody can tell you address through a street number, or whatever the case, plot number. But it's always good to give us your address with the box number. That's what I advise you. Give us the box number. That is KRSS. And then Nansan is saying, can I only write the address on the general description? No, you can't just write the address, because it moves together. It is business name and address. So I expect you to say, for example, Nansana Canteen, PO Box 11, Wakiso, like that. Maybe even include a telephone if you so wish. But even if, as long as you have given box number, whether you add telephone or not, it will still be an address. And then highlight more on the same words that mean the general description. Oh, Mr. Mujungo had talked about them up there. He said the general description can as well mean background. This is where they ask you background of the what? Of the business. They can ask that you give the characteristics of the business or the club project. Then they are meaning that you give the general description. If they ask you the characteristics of the business project you operated. So don't start saying that the business was strategically located, was what? We don't mean that. We want the background. They ask you to describe. Describe. It's the same issue. They ask you for the profile. So once you see such questions, profile, describe, characteristics, give the profile of the business. Exactly, they want you to describe it, because a profile and general description, the relationship is similar. Okay, Bishop was asking about when is literature divinity discussion. This is plain from, okay. Now that one, I think Mr. Kaziba will show you the timetable. The timetable keeps on circulating, and the timetable for next week will also be released, and perhaps those subjects will also be there. He will inform you details of that, but we cater for all subjects. I think majority have answered them here. So someone asking, when are we discussing physics? Physics is going, when you see it on the timetable, they will release next timetable for next week also, and the day you'll see physics is when it will be there. Paper 2, Maggie is asking for paper 2. Yes, after paper 1, our next destination will be also looking at paper 2 as the core. Like I've said, we sent on a certain paper, but we answer all in all papers. Today we have based on paper 3, but we are also tapping in others. Next time we shall base on paper 1, but we tap in others. And then the next one we base on paper 2, and then we also tap on others. Then after there, we shall now bring questions for discussion. And perhaps I'll now release those questions so that we discuss them. But I wanted the issue of approach for all of us to internalize the approach. Because however much we discuss this question is, in fact, mastering content 100%, but when you don't know the approach, still you won't make a good grade. Also knowing the approach, when you have not read, you also not make a good grade. So you dear learners, I advise you, embrace both. Have the content, know the approach. You are going to make an excellent grade. Okay. Okay, Luvega is just appreciating. Highlight more on the same words. Okay, that one is handled. What happens, that is TESO integrated SS. What happens is saying what happens if 2 or more students use the same business for field trip and present different answers on majorly description. Like I had talked about this, that really we should make entrepreneurship practical by especially going for the trip. I know it may be difficult to attach yourself to a certain business given the limited time we have these days, because sometimes you realize learners also study in holiday and they have no time. However, there are learners who come from homes where they already have some small businesses. I believe, if not all of us, at least the biggest percentage has ever been involved in a business. And that is itself an attachment. You can relate to that experience you had, though it may not be a true attachment, but it can give you a reflection, an experience of what really prevails. Now, going straight to your answer, what happens if the 2 or more students use the same business name for field trip and present different answers? Now, TESO integrated essays, what I can tell you is that they don't mark group, they mark individuals. So even if the entire class of 100 learners who do entrepreneurship give different business name or give the same business name, but other things they describe differently, still they will be marked. Why? They don't mark a group, they mark an individual. In fact, there is a time when someone had given membership fee. But I will not go into those stories. But then we realize you are a learner, you are stranded somewhere, you were giving something like your point, or let's say the sources of finance, and you have said maybe membership fee, and then you have forgotten the membership fee you contributed in your school business club. Please don't lose out on that marker just because you have forgotten. Put any figure. Put any figure as long as it is sizable, you will be marked. I don't expect you to have operated a chapati business and then you tell me that the membership fee was 1 million. You will be lying. So as long as you give a figure which is reasonable, never you be stranded and say, now I've forgotten, what did we tell us? Please don't cram some of these processes. But I advise you to engage in, because once you engage in a particular project, really some of these things you'll find them very easy to give evidence. Somebody has the hand up. Stake Campus, you unmute yourself and ask what you want to ask. Stake. Okay. Thank you for the supplement. Thank you for the supplement from, I think is the teacher, Mr. Saviri Agre, who is saying the business profile, date of establishment is a must. Yeah, thank you for that supplement. Thank you. Now somebody is saying, can I use 07000? You see, I go back to the issue of being realistic. Now, Nansen and St. Joseph, we don't have a number of 0700. Much as we are emulating on what should be done, but this 07000 has never existed accordingly in Uganda here. Maybe that's what I can say. So I don't expect you to use such a number. Please pick a random number. Advise students, they can even use there's no need of cramming a phone number. Use any phone number, whether for the parent, whether for guardian, whether for the school head teacher. Just use it and put there. Whether you put a random number that comes in your head, as long as there are 10 figures, place them. Don't worry about that. So don't waste time cramming the box number and what. There's no need for that, because work is marked individually. Ring SS is just appreciating. Kangaroo Miller public SOS. What if they give you both bank? What if they give you both bank balance and cash balance when you are requested to prepare a cash flow statement? What is the use of bank balance? Okay, they have given you both cash balance and bank balance. Now that one, that's just the balance brought down in short. You'll just combine. If you want, you can combine the balances. It is all an inflow that you have to add on inflows. So you can say cash balance, you write. Bank balance, you also write. Then you say add cash inflows. So they're just meaning that this is cash in hand and then cash at bank. They are all inflows. So I think Anglo Miller, you have gotten it well. Uganda Matters Yoga, do we write the address on every question in paper 2 projects? It depends on the nature of the question given. For example, if they have said, explain the benefits of the business to the community, explain the benefits of the business to the community, why would you waste time with the writing the address? Go direct and answer. But majority of the things there, programs, guidelines, and if you find the questions of guidelines, programs, I said programs are the steps in paper 1. What we call steps, stages, procedures are what we turn into programs in paper 2, and they go in an activity column. Guidelines, I told you that those are the ways, strategies, techniques, controls. They're the ones we turn into guidelines in paper 2. Then all these other documents, use source documents, all of them, they must have the business name and address. So programs, guidelines, all documents must have business name and address, except these usual questions, like I've said, explaining the benefits, maybe outline the causes of labor turnover in your business. There's no big deal of writing business name and address. However, to be on the safe side in paper 2, I advise you to keep writing business name and address, because there's a time when things are tough and they are looking for where they can put you, fix a mark, and the one who had written that, we never know when they adjust the guide, may be at a bigger advantage than you who never really wrote anything. Yes, Mr. Charles is appreciating you, indeed. Is it a must to frame all the project work in paper 2? Is it a must? I would advise that you keep putting the frame. That's the advice I can give. But there are things we can't put a frame. Like, let's take an example. If they ask you to draw an organizational chart, there's no need of really you putting a frame in an organizational chart, putting a frame on a marketing flow chart, or the one we call a distribution chart. There's no big deal with frames. However, like as I've said, it's not good to mark yourself. It's good you there's no penalty in paper 2 for putting what they did not want. If you put what they did not want, it will be crossed, and they mark out what they wanted. So it has rained out. It is already 6 p.m. and the questions are still flowing in. Perhaps we shall also refer some of these questions in the next session, because I see time is not on our side. Okay, Mr. Charles is trying to answer some of them in the inbox here. Thank you very much. Keep assisting here because time is also running out. What are the tools used to manage a business? Okay. Tools used for tools for managing a business. I think you are looking at now the monitoring tools now. In a business, there are some targets that are used for. If you want to achieve profit, then you must have a profit target. So it's also, you must have a sales target to compare the sales of the previous period to the current one. You must have the business plan so that it can show you the financial requirements of the business. You must have the cash flow statement that can show you the cash inflows and outflows. You must have the operational budget that should show you the incomes expected and the expenditures. You must have the worker schedule, the worker order form, all that. Those are all tools for monitoring your business. Can they ask you to draft a balance sheet for the business club? It's this is common with the case study where they can put in some issues, but it's also possible. It's also possible to ask you for a balance sheet, but it's a rare circumstance. Now, if they ask you for a balance sheet, it means as long as you are able, you have knowledge of how they prepare a balance sheet in paper 2, then you apply the very knowledge and you show the sum of the assets you had and the liabilities you experienced. Okay. Kindly send us questions you had prepared. Okay. Is it a must to frame all project work? In the interest of time, members, maybe let me end with Madonna. Hi, maybe has something to say. Madonna, you unmute yourself and then you say something and we get a closing prayer and close the session. Madonna, I've unmuted you. Please talk. I see your hand up. Okay, Madonna is just appreciating. Thank you very much. General Pape, I think Mr. Kaziba will give you the timetable and you'll know when is General Pape. These timetables, they keep changing, and for next week, they will show you. This one of this week has already been made. Now that you have showed the need, really they will make it. I don't know whether Mr. Kaziba is online here. Mr. Kaziba, are you online? I think he's still on another session of O-level organizing it. It's okay. Thank you very much. I discussed a range of issues.
Yes.
Anybody? I think, yes.
Yes. Okay. I think let's allow them to. Oh, yeah. I don't know whether Mr. Teacher Richard.
Yes, sir.
I'm seeing someone saying, can you throw some light on the business layout? Would you be having something and you show them?
Okay. By the way, that question came in a bit earlier, but I was so busy and I forgot to hint about it. I think this is the part where somebody is asking questions involving organizational chart, plant layout, and yet they're asking it in section B or section C. Now, a question can come and they say, draw or present the organizational chart. If they ask you to draw or present the organizational chart, what we do here is to draw or illustrate what you are told. If they say draw, but then if they say describe the organizational chart, or they say describe the plant layout, here we are saying you give the responsibilities of the people, or for the sake of a plant layout, you give the purpose of the elements in a plant layout. So if you ask me to describe the plant layout, in this case, I will talk about the maybe administration. I talk about what administration is all about. I talk about the gate, what the gate is all about. I will talk about the washrooms, the production area. I just keep stating those points as I explain them, just as we do in paper one under production. So that's how you should differentiate those terms. So if they tell you to draw, draw. There's a time where they say that they tell you to illustrate. At the same time, they tell you to describe. In fact, they say with the help of an illustration, describe the organizational structure of the business you visited. So in this case, it means you have to draw it, and then after you pick those elements and you keep explaining them one by one. But if they just say describe, then there you only pick on the key points and explain them. I think I should hand over to you. Thank you all for attending. I should hand over to Mr. Kaziba, who
Okay,
should
the
organize
last one.
for.
Okay, thank you
Yes.
so much.
Yes, sir.
Someone is I'm seeing very many questions coming. What is the importance of the SWOT analysis from St. Valley Kudembe?
Yes, okay. Now, the importance of a SWOT analysis, you see, this is now paper one. If you understand what strength, what weak, that SWOT means strength, the weakness, the opportunities and threats, the first key points there to give, the first point would be SWOT analysis helps to identify the strength of the business. Use those, the first 4 points is using what SWOT analysis itself means. It helps the business to identify its weaknesses. SWOT analysis also helps the business to identify the threats that the business is exposed to. You can also say SWOT analysis helps the business to identify the opportunities existing in the entrepreneurial environment. So even before I go for some other points, already the word SWOT itself gives me 4 points there. Is there any other question that is critical we can't leave out?
Highlight us on the debenture received and the debenture issued, and where does each belong in a cash flow?
Okay. First of all, a debenture is a unit of capital to a unit of loan to a limited company. If you studied some commerce at all level, we talk about limited joint stock companies, and we said they are subdivided into a private limited company and a public limited company. So when a liability company, the ones we call those joint stock companies, get a loan from the bank, we call that loan banker loan. But if a private limited company or liability company borrows a loan from an individual, in this case, we have some people who are very rich that they can borrow the business. Now, if a limited liability company borrows a loan from an individual, that loan is not called a loan as in the word loan, but they call it debenture. And once that person gives a loan to the business, which we are calling a debenture, is given a proof that he has given them a loan, and that document they give him is called a debenture certificate. Now, if, for example, you gave, let me sample out Nightil, because one of the private, or Uganda Breweries Limited, because it's a limited company. If an individual, if me, Richard, I gave Uganda Breweries Limited 1 billion today, they will issue me with a debenture certificate as a proof that I've given them 1 billion. Now, to Uganda Breweries, they have issued a debenture certificate. And once a business issues a debenture, it means certificate, it means it is a cash inflow. Then when a business receives a debenture, receiving a debenture means the certificate they gave me, now the period has expired, I am returning their certificate, in this case, Uganda Breweries, and they are giving me my money back. Now, when they give my money back and I give them their certificate, they are receiving a certificate. That is cash outflow, because they are losing money towards paying to this certificate. But when they issue a certificate to me, then it means me, I'm leaving them with money. For them, they are giving me the agreement of a debenture certificate issuing. So issuing is cash inflow. Receiving, debenture received, is cash outflow. I think, do we have another critical issue here? Is stolen cash included in the cash flow statement? No, because a cash flow statement, its role is to project the cash inflows. It just estimates the possible cash inflows and cash outflows. Therefore, you cannot predict that in such and such a month, a thief will come and steal cash from the business. You can't predict issues of thieves coming to a business, so it is not recorded there. Or somebody was saying, pardon, a definition of a debenture. I say the debenture is a unit of a loan to a public, to a limited company, a unit of loan to a limited company. When are we having Ent 2 and Ent 3? In the next session, we have agreed we shall handle paper Ent 1 and then the other Ent 2. Okay. I think, Mr. Kaziba, those are some of the critical areas.
I'm seeing this hand up, KJSM.
Okay.
And
KJ. Okay, KJ, unmute yourself. Yes.
Sir, I would like to ask about when the business visited. So the question is, describe the size of the business.
Describe
the size of the business.
Describe the size of the business. Which section are you asking in that question?
The question is about the business visited.
The question is about the business visited. And they're asking you to part A, they are saying describe the size of the
business visited.
Of the business visited. Now, in this case, we shall mostly talk about because if you want to determine the size of any business, the first thing we look at is by the way, we give a general description, but we pick out those points which reflect the size of the business. For example, we look at description of assets. We should know which assets are they holding, because they are the ones which will reflect whether the business is big or not. We look at the sources of funds in terms of capital. Which size of capital are they operating with in terms of amount? So we look at those key areas in general description to determine the size of the business. Then we also look at other factors in paper 1 that determine the size of a business.
Okay, sir.
There's this one, Techno 5, yes? Techno? Okay, Techno, I think is up. Let us give chance to report Bernard. Or report you on platform.
Okay, sir. The question is, describe the nature of the business.
Describe the nature of the business. Now, the nature of the business, first of all, in a general description, there's something we tend to confuse there. There's what they call the nature of the business. In fact, nature of the business, you find some people giving manufacturing business, others are, let me take an example that you are making some cassava, so you are in manufacturing. Others are giving sole proprietorship or partnership. These are two different things. Now, when they ask you others, in fact, they ask you for nature of business, you are giving a legal form of ownership. So there's where they say nature of business and then nature of legal form of ownership. If they say nature of ownership or legal form of ownership, that's when you bring in either sole proprietorship or partnership. Those are the common ones under business clubs. Then when they say nature of the business, mostly we look at whether it is manufacturing, whether trading, whether service business, or it's because there are 3 types of business. Either you are in trading, manufacturing, and what else? Agriculture business. So when they ask you describe the nature of the business, give the general description of the business in short. But if they have put only 2 marks, then they are strictly targeting you to tell them whether it is a manufacturing business. So you must give business name and address, and then tell them whether it is a manufacturing business or trading or agriculture, whatever the case. Then Proshen is, unmute yourself, Proshen.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. I want to know whether depreciations go into the cash flow.
Okay. Now, depreciation usually, and we don't usually indicate depreciation in the cash flow statement. Why? We cannot predict the amount of depreciation really. You can't sit there because, like I've said, a cash flow is just used to project. We don't prepare a cash flow after the trading period has ended, no. Before we are going to begin maybe a certain trading period, let's say I might be running for a period from July up to September. So a cash flow must be prepared before July. Perhaps I must have prepared it in June. So I can't predict that this building, because it is assets which depreciate, except land does not depreciate. It's very hard for me to sit here and predict that this building I'm going to operate business in, by September, it would have lost value worth 10 million. It's really very hard to predict depreciation. That's why I see that we don't usually include depreciation of a fixed asset in the cash flow statement. Ebenezer, hi. Ebenezer, unmute yourself.
Sir, we are asking
yes,
that what if the question is asking to describe the business? Are we supposed to give the general description or?
Exactly. So initially, Mr. Charles had told you there that giving the background of the business, general description, describing the business, all mean the same. Characteristics of the business, profile of the business you operated, they all mean the same.
Another question says that describe the operation activities of your business. How can I approach that?
Now, if they ask you to describe the
operation activities of your business,
they are simply asking you the things you did in a business. We all know that in a business, we carry out purchasing. If it is a manufacturing, there is installation of machinery and equipment. We carry out actual production. There is packaging of products. We carry out branding of products. We carry out distribution. There is financial management activities. We carry out market research. All those are activities in a business. Storing of the products, etc., etc. Those are operational activities in a business, things that you do daily to you sustain the business. Okay.
Another question, sir. So I'm asking that if you are told to give the general description of the business, are you, if you write it in a paragraph, is it okay or not?
In fact, you are supposed to write in a paragraph. Each point you give it on a fresh line. General description. If you combine them, you're looking for 1 marker together. In fact, in paper 3, if you combine things, you are going to get 1 mark for all the content you have written. It's always good to give points separate. And also, I advise you to protect stop and then
thank you, sir.
Yeah. Then John Paul.
Thank you, sir. So now we wanted to know, are credit sales included in the cash flow?
No, credit sales are not included in the cash flow. We cannot predict the people who will buy our things on credit. It is very hard for you. For example, if I ask you, if you have a shop today, Do you know the people who will come and borrow in August? Exactly, no. You can't know people who will borrow. So we don't record credit sales in a cash flow statement. But if these credit sales are paid, we record them as receipt from debtors. If they pay us, we record them as receipt from debtors. But if there was credit sales and they have not paid, then completely we don't include them. The same applies to credit purchase. If you buy on credit from another supplier and you didn't pay cash, we don't record that as cash outflow. But should you later pay that money back, the one we call payment to creditors, then we shall record it under cash flow. Credit sales, we only record under inflow if you later paid them, and we record them as receipt from debtors. Who else has not said here? Campus, Stake Campus. Okay, Stake, you are not online, I think. Lenovo, unmute yourself.
Hello, sir. For me, my question is all about discounts. How are we supposed to handle them in the cash flow statement? Thank you.
Okay. We also don't include discounts in a cash flow statement. Why? You cannot predict how many people the business will give a reduction in the price charged. Equally, you can't know how many people that will give you, or how many suppliers or creditors will offer you a discount on product you have bought. So it's very hard to predict who will give for your price and whom will you reduce the price. That's why we don't include the discounts in the cash flow statement. Then you also have, I think all these ones I've asked. Stake Campus again. Yes, Stake. Finally, Bernard.
Okay, so the question is, in case it's a service business, how do you describe its production? Then also, how do you come up with a business idea? Then finally, the methods of production, the methods of sales promotion in the business.
The methods of sales promotion in a business. Now, this one, what is sales promotion? First of all, sales promotion, these are activities undertaken by an entrepreneur other than advertising to increase sales in a business. Now, you have to look out for those things that will help you increase sales in a business. So one of the ways of even advertising, for example, someone can say advertising. If it is a school business club, I'm taking an example, you will say, this was done, let's say, every Monday at 4 p.m. during the assemblies. And maybe by the club mobilizer, whatever the case, whoever advertises for you. Then we can also say charging fair prices. For example, we would charge only shillings 500 for a chapati, yet our competitors were charging shillings 800. You see, that's how we use the content of paper 1 on sales promotion, methods used in sales promotion in paper 1, but we give evidence of what exactly happened. Then can you come up with another question? What did you say? It has run out of my mind. If you can pardon for me the question. I think there was, how was the idea developed? Something of the kind. If they ask you how the idea was really developed, some of the key points you give, if they ask you how did you develop the idea, you can say holding the meeting, because at first you must have held the meeting. Remember, an idea is any thought that an entrepreneur may come up with. So to come up with any thought, either through brainstorming, you must hold a meeting first. Then from there, you generate business ideas, meaning different people will come up. Let us make chapati, another. No, let us make a canteen, another one. Let us maybe make a cleaning service business, whatever the case. Then after generating those business ideas, we now analyze the business ideas raised. Should we make a canteen? Should we make popcorn business? Should we go with snacks? we are analyzing. Then in stage 4 now, we choose the best business idea. Maybe finally we say, I think popcorn will be effective because of some reasons. Maybe there is market, it is more easier and all that. So after choosing that best business idea, you now take the selected business idea to the club patron for approval. In this case is your teacher. You take to the teacher for approval. Who is responsible? Maybe whoever teaches it paper 3 becomes your club patron. So you say, teacher, we have decided on this, maybe on popcorn business. And then from there, taking the selected idea to the head teacher for approval, meaning the teacher now also takes the same idea to the administration, in this case, the head teacher, to approve that particular idea. And that's how, if they ask you that, how did you develop the business idea? That's how you should answer. It is in the form of steps. Holding the meeting, raising business ideas, analyzing the business ideas raised, choosing the best business idea, and then taking the selected business idea to the patron for approval, and lastly, taking the selected idea to the head teacher for approval. Then the other question it has run out of my mind, if you can make me remember. Okay. Masitula here, Bagala. Unmute yourself.
Master, importance of starting up a business using the loan.
Importance of starting up a business using a loan. Now, this one, it involves using general knowledge of what importance is it to start a business using. First of all, it increases on the capital of the business. Secondly, it enables the business to carry out research. Remember, when you carry out research in a business, it puts you at a competitive advantage. Another one, it keeps the business with enough working capital. You'll always have the capital in the business to meet the day-to-day running of the activities. So these are just questions which need the general knowledge applying. That's we apply knowledge, and if I have a loan of 30 contest, and in the interest of time, we also have techno air. Lastly, time is not on our side. Lastly, some other questions we shall handle them next time. Okay. Techno Spark lastly. Okay. Lenovo. Okay. I think with that, Mr. Kazibe, if you are still online, if we don't have any other critical issue, we can close up the session. Okay.
Yes.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Pape just wanted to thank you and appreciate you for having facilitated to us. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Let's give us a closing prayer. Just one volunteer.
Maybe I can give it.
Yeah, you give it and we close up. Thank you.
Okay, let us humble ourselves and we pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, Lord, we kindly thank you for this session we have had with our facilitators. And we thank you for all those people who are connected to this Zoom session, oh Lord. Thank you very much for making us start this Zoom meeting and finishing it well. God, we thank you very much because we did not expect this to happen. And we kindly request you, God, to make all what we have learned from this session gasp into our brains, oh Lord, until we sit for our UNEP paper series. And then, God, we kindly request you that the next time we should also be granted this opportunity to share with other members different ideas, oh Lord. We have prayed all this through you. Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Okay. Thank you so much. Allow me to first thank Teacher Richard for the wonderful facilitation he has offered this evening. Teacher Richard, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sacrificing the time and sharing with the country. I want also to thank all the schools that have joined this session and all the teachers that have been able to connect their children online. We are really grateful. Thank you so much. We shall have more sessions. Tomorrow we shall have another session for another subject. Even next week, like Teacher Richard has promised that next week we shall hand another paper. Please, we shall let you know on time. And those people who have missed the question he was displaying that where you wanted to make more practice, we shall be sharing with you and your teachers such that you can be able to access those materials. Thank you so much, Teacher Richard, and thank you so much everyone that has joined. We shall be sharing with you the recording such that in case there's anything you have not been able to pick, you can be able to review the recording. We wish you all the best and nice supper to everyone. Bye-bye.